I'm so excited because I am reading through the Bible in 52 weeks and I have already invited you. So where you at, sis? Make sure you grab your Bible because we are just starting on Exodus. We finished Genesis and it was amazing. And I've never read through Genesis front page to the end of the page and I was just like, whoa. Whoa, okay? There's so much in there. There's so much drama, there's so much craziness, but it's just so powerful and so just amazing. And I just finished that up and I just finished Exodus 1-3. And so with this Bible study, basically you have 6 days of reading passages and then 1 day for rest or catching up. And so if you are anything like me, I'm just I want to know more. I finished my little 3 chapters and I'm just like, what's next? And so sometimes I read a little bit more. But anyways, I'm going to talk to you guys today about Exodus chapters 1-3 and just kind of talk to you guys about the things that stood out to me. And real quick, here is a disclaimer. Okay, so when you read the Bible, the living word, the Bible is reading you too, right? It's an interaction. It's a conversation between you and your Holy Father, right? And so what he speaks to me is for me, right? And what he speaks to you is for you. So when you read the Bible, you're going to have some different points that come out. But the things like what I'm about to tell you may be like, whoa, I didn't see that. Or maybe it's like, yes, I agree. That was powerful too, So just make sure that you grab the Bible and read the Bible for yourself because God is going to be talking to you. He's going to be telling you things. You guys are going to have a conversation and it's just going to be so amazing. So let's get this started. So when I first start a new book of the Bible, I make sure I get it in context. I want to know the history. I want to know who wrote it. I want to know who it was for. I want to know the messages and the purpose and the reason why they wrote this book. When was it written? And you just want to get things in context because this is a historical document, right? Even though the Bible is relevant today. But you want to make sure that it is in context so that you can apply whatever is being said to you to your life. So let's go a little bit over the history of Exodus. All right, so Exodus picks up from where Genesis left off, right? And so that is right after Jacob dies. And so it is part of the Pentateuch. This was written after the Israelites finished constructing and dedicating the tabernacle at Mount Sinai. The time period is 1805 BC to 1445 BC. And so you know what Exodus means, it's departure, right? You have a mass exodus, right? They're leaving, right? And so the message and purpose is that God is at work for the people of Israel and he wants to dwell among them. So it's talking about God's patience, grace, forgiveness, and Israelites is gone. All right, so this is at a point where Joseph is gone, his brothers are gone, and it is past them. And so now they have a new king over Egypt, and he doesn't know much or probably anything about Joseph and then the covenant that he had with God, right? Now we have all these Israelites that are multiplying greatly, they are blowing up. God is blessing them to be fruitful and multiply, man. And the Egyptians are not a fan of that. So Egyptians have this history of, racial pride, right? And so if they're becoming more of the minority, they are feeling triggered. They're going to feel, that this is a threat to their kingdom and what's going on. And so this new king decides to force some slavery on the Israelites, right? And so the crazy thing is that he keeps putting really bad rules and regulations, beating them, hurting them, killing them, doing whatever he can so that they can stay oppressed. But the more oppression, the more affliction, the more God blesses them and they keep growing. So it's just do you not see what's happening here? But the king is whatever, I don't want this to happen. And so what he decides to do is start killing off all the males, right? So we have all the men or the kids, the boys that are, the ideas that they are supposed to die as soon as they are born. The midwives are supposed to kill them and, throw them in the Nile. Just I don't want the boys to exist, right? And so the girls can stay alive, but the boys cannot. But it's crazy though, because he had these midwives and they decided to say no to the king, right? And so it's crazy because they're supposed to listen to the government, right? You have this government in charge, but if it goes against God's will, right, then you don't do that, right? And so they were obedient to God, and God blessed them. And so we can keep talking about that, but I want to just give you guys a little overview of the chapters, okay? Now we have the birth of Moses. And so his parents saw him and was like, he's beautiful. He's beyond immaculate. Like, he's just, there's something special about this one, and I cannot let the king take him, right? And so she's not afraid of the king, who's saying, we're killing every boy that is born. And so she hides him for 3 months, right? And then eventually takes him and wraps him in this, boat or this floating basket, where all of a sudden the daughter of Pharaoh is gonna find him, right? And so first of all, you gonna put your baby in a river? Like, that's so scary. But she has so much faith. She trusted that God was gonna take over. She's like giving him back to the father who gifted her with this baby, and God's going to bless that, right? So Pharaoh's daughter found the baby in the river, the Nile River, and then she named him Moses, which meant I drew him from water. And this is a type of baptism, right? He was in the water and then came out, and then all of a sudden he has a new life, right? So Moses was adopted to this family and was raised as a prince. He was royalty. He was heir to the kingdom, in fact, you guys. And so he was waited on hand and foot. He was taken care of. Like, back then, they were really huge believers in education and learning. And so he had this amazing, opportunity to learn so many things, right? And so he grows up in this household. But one of the really cool things is that he was raised by his mom, his real mom, his Hebrew mom, right? And so he had those connections, in that he was able to still connect with his background, his history, but still also live in royalty, right? So there is some protection happening here. So because of that connection, Moses was like, I see the Israelites, they're my family, they're my people. And he sees all of these injustices, the slavery, the beatings of, the people. And he is like, he connects with them, and he's like, this is not right. There's this one point where he sees some Egyptians beating some of the Hebrews, the Israelites, right? And so he ends up like looking around, and he's like, and kills them. And he hides them, right? And then he goes and talks to two Hebrew boys, and he's like, what's going on? Why are you beating your neighbor? And he's like, are you gonna kill us like you did the other one? And so he realized that he was found out, and he fled. He fled to this country or town called Midian. And Midian is a place where his ancestors are from, so they're like probably distant relatives. And so he finds favor there, he is protected there, and he is given a wife. So now he's away from all this royalty, he's away from being, waited on hand and foot, to now serving and being, just a regular person. So chapter 2 ends with the king dying, and the Israelites are just screaming, they're in pain, the labor is horrible, they are being horribly mistreated, their cries are so loud that it ascends to God, and he remembers the covenants. So in chapter 3, this is where this burning bush comes into play, right? And so, Moses is walking, doing his thing, and all of a sudden he sees like this crazy bush, right? And it's on fire, but it's not burning. It's not, doing anything. It's just on fire. And he's like, let me go check it out. And then all of a sudden the angel of the Lord speaks out, Moses, Moses. And so he comes, and this interaction is like so powerful to me. So as soon as Moses realizes the angel of the Lord, he hid his face, which stood out to me because it was a totally different response. So in the commentary, it talks about how he might have remembered his sins, and he's like, oh my gosh. So God is telling him, you're about to lead my people out. You're going to get my people from Pharaoh, and they are going to go. And Moses is like, who am I? Like, why me? Who am I? And God is like, I will be with you. And so he kind of turned the idea of like, you're too focused on yourself. It's not about you, it's about me. So let's let's do this again. And so he tells Moses what's going to happen. He's like, you're going to go to Pharaoh. You're going to tell him to go. We're going to go on a 3-day trip. We're going to go sacrifice to our God. And he's not going to let you go. So I'm going to do a whole bunch of things. I'm going to do some crazy, extraordinary things. He's going to be like, what in the world is going on? And then you're going to leave. The angel of the Lord continues saying, you will not leave empty-handed, right? And so he said, you're going to tell the women to go to their neighbors and ask for jewelry, silver, all these things, clothes. And it wasn't like that they were stealing or anything. It was, they've been in bondage for over a century. All right, so here are some of the points that really stood out to me. There are so many things, but I just want to cover these things. And I have my notes here because I have to follow notes. So the first one was from chapter 1. Obeying God is number 1. He will reward your obedience. So one of the really cool things about midwives is that they do not really have families. They stick to their occupation, right? So they just deliver babies. They can't go and have their own babies. And God was like, because of your obedience, I'm going to give you households. They could have died disobeying Pharaoh, but their God is greater than Pharaoh. So like, what's Pharaoh to my God? Another one is, the greater the affliction, the more blessings. First of all, because what was happening is, the Israelites kept growing and growing and growing. And because it was, a threat to the Egyptians, they put more forced labor. They're like, kill the kids, do this, whip them, and they kept putting all this affliction on them, but God just kept blessing them. Oh my God. In chapter 2, one of the points that really stood out to me was that God remembers you. He will not forget you. In fact, he never forgets you. He never forgets his people, right? And so when it says he will remember, it's just he's turning his ear and inclining and about to make some moves on your behalf. And so don't fret, whatever the situation is looking like. God hears you. He remembers you. He's going to be there for you. He's going to show up, okay? Also, another point that stood out to me was that, although you are presented with something like beautifully packaged, right? Royalty, jewels, money, opportunities, that it's not always good. Moses was heir to the Egyptian kingdom, right? And so he had access to, his own maids, and people took care of him. He was going to be king one day, right? And that wasn't of God. And so even though it's presented beautifully, it doesn't mean that you should go and take that opportunity. All right, one of the points that stood out to me a lot in chapter 3 was that you will have affliction, but you will not be destroyed. So thinking about that burning bush, right? If you have the angel of the Lord, if you have the Holy Spirit with you, you're going to suffer. There's going to be so much happening around you, but you will not be consumed, y'all. You will not be consumed. It's not going to take you out. God is with you. And I just thought that was so just powerful. And the last point was, when you try to do God's work with man's wisdom, it's futile. It ain't gonna work. So back when Moses killed that Egyptian, and when he was trying to tell the boys to, don't kill your neighbor or whatever, he tried to help them, but it didn't work because it's just like, that's not what God told you to do in the first place. Boom. Yeah. All right, so I was reading in the Enduring Word commentary. One thing that pointed out was just like the similarities between Jesus and Moses. And so I'm going to read those right here. It says, Jesus and Moses' similarities. They both were favored by God from birth, miraculously preserved in childhood, mighty in words and deeds, offered deliverance to Israel, rejected with spite, rejected in their right to be prince and judge over Israel, couldn't deliver in palaces of glory. So while Moses was in the palace, while he was royalty, he could not deliver in that. He needed to come down and humble himself. And that's when, he went to Midian and was able to become more humble, right? So he's no longer being served, he's now serving. So I want you to let me know what stood out to you in chapters 1 through 3 in the comments below. And if you want to join the group, look in the details for the link to join our group so we can read the Bible in 52 weeks. And peace and blessings.